Good afternoon, SLAE family. I am so happy to be here today with our special guest. I must say, this is one of the most touching, moving things I've ever had the honor of sharing with you. So today I have with me our guest, Kay Wilson, who is author of this amazing book. And I'm going to share with you today a little bit about how incredible she is before I let her talk. Is that okay, Kay?
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it is very common that women experience domestic violence. It's an enormous problem all over the world. And it is very rare to find somebody who will put themselves out there with the vulnerability and the honesty and just the passion to help other women and write a book like the book that Kay has written. So Kay is a survivor, and I would now call champion, who has overcome domestic violence. Her book is amazing, and I would love to just have you start off, Kay, today, if you would. First of all, share with everybody a little bit about your background. Why don't we start with where you were before all this happened? You are a very successful businesswoman in Ohio. Can you tell everybody a little bit about your life prior to this?
Thank you. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here this afternoon. I will share a little bit about where I was. So graduated from a small town in Columbus, right outside Columbus. I grew up in Westerville, which is a little bit outside of Columbus. And after high school, went to college at the Ohio State University. And as I was a student at Ohio State, there was a period of time I was on the track team. My scholarship is what took me to Ohio State. After graduating from Ohio State University, I opened up a restaurant. So I had a restaurant in what in Columbus is called our Short North area. It's kind of like our arts district. And I had a restaurant there for about 4 years. It was called Reggae Cuisine. And it was a sit-down restaurant, could seat about 96 people. And had that restaurant for quite some time before starting a family, getting married, and moving out of the country.
Excellent. And your book, by the way, I just realized I forgot to say the title. I'm all excited. It's Holding On to Somewhere. Your book really takes, apologize for that. Your book takes everybody through the journey that you went through. And, you know, one of the things that I think is really powerful is that not only are you able to reach women who are experiencing what you experienced, but maybe to break down some misconceptions people have that have not been through it. You know, many women will go, well, why don't they leave? Or didn't they see it coming, et cetera. You know, for you, you got into this relationship, and how long was it before there were any incidents at all?
It was about 11 months, close to the year mark. Yeah, close to the year mark. Um, you know, I think the first incident, which was in the book, you know, it was, I would say, out of character. You know, I think that for a lot of women, and I would use this similarity, if you will. There are a lot of people who, through my own sharing, would say, you know, why wouldn't you just leave? And I would pose the question, how many women out there who worked in jobs that they did not like, that they were not passionate about, you know, but there was a reason, right? And so, you know, it seems an odd comparison, but there are a lot of people who've worked in careers that they were unhappy in for several years, but yet every day, every morning, they got up, they got dressed, they put on their best, they put on their lipstick, and they went to a job that they hated. And so for me, it was thinking about my family and also using my personal history. I was adopted. And so not only was I estranged from my biological parents, but then there was a time when I was a teenager that I was also taken from, not taken from, but estranged from my adoptive parents. And so the idea of what a whole family, a traditional family looks like, weighed heavily on my decisions and weighed heavily on how I even perceived my self-worth. And so all those factors went into my relationship, and I brought all that with me.
Yes, and what you said is really interesting. I never thought of it like that in terms of what you were saying with a job, because sometimes people go to a job and it's injuring them, it's causing them health problems, and they keep going too. I mean, there's courts all over the country full of lawsuits with problems where
Yeah.
people are being exposed to something, or, something is poisoning them, or the environment is hurting them, or even they're doing repetitive things that are causing their body to break down from, working factories and working in places where it's a repeat movement. So that's powerful. Now, you do talk about a lot in the book, your faith, and I'm a woman of faith too, and there are many, many people who will watch this of lots of different faiths, but that played into it. Can you talk a little bit about forgiveness and your morals and ethics and how that played into you interacting with him?
Yeah, my faith played a great deal in what I was thinking. Even when I look at the story of Christ as an example, and some people say things like, this is my cross to bear. And, as I was thinking in my own relationship with God, maybe this is my cross, right? Maybe this is my test. Maybe this is just something that I have to withstand or endure in order to get on the other side, and what type of reward is going to come on the other side. And so I think as I thought about, breaking a covenant, it was more difficult for me to imagine breaking a covenant with this man was not what I was scared of. It was breaking my covenant with God when I said that I was marrying this man. That was my promise, not just to this man, but that was my covenant to God. And so, when you hear stories, and I grew up with stories and grew up in the church about, Lot's wife turned around and then she turned into salt. And so, I was not trying to turn into salt. I just, in my mind, I kept thinking, if I continue being the best wife I can be, if I continue being that person who would be loving, I could make this change. So I carried that with me quite a bit. And the decisions that I was making or not making weighed heavily, I think, because of my relationship.
And it's interesting. I think that people don't understand how difficult it can be to leave. And we'll do episode 1 of you leaving in the book. And for me, there were 2 things. Obviously, there were children involved, and I'll ask if you don't mind to please share a little bit about how you tried to leave and take the kids and what happened there. But there's also support. And there were a few times in the book where there were family members, people that truly loved you, that were trying to get you to stay. And it just broke my heart to think about that. And I know they had the best of intentions, but that's a reality for people. So would you mind addressing both of those factors? One, the first time you tried to get out and how it did not work out well, and also the support, feedback, and the community in your family, and how that all falls out when someone tries to leave too.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things when we think of a breakup of a relationship, the breakup of the family and the extended family. If you divorce, a lot of families, you don't just divorce the person, you have in-laws, you have, your nucleus of friends, people that you used to, play cards with, go out with, all that changes. And so I had a lot of amazing and very well-intentioned friends. Unfortunately, when relationships go awry, sometimes people feel like they have to pick sides. And there were folks who certainly didn't condone the violence, but thought that, in me staying somehow, they would work with me and change this. And, here in Ohio, we have a great rise of like opiates, right? And so you think of people who are addicts, and sometimes whatever a person is dealing with inside of them, that behavior that needs to change, that it takes that person to make that choice, to make a cognitive choice to change their behavior. And so even though a lot of my friends were very well intentioned, I had a lot of people who prayed,
Mm,
for our relationship. It was going to take a change in his heart. Um,
yes.
and so moving through um, the process, I also had family members who they didn't want to see me
Mm,
go. I had a mother-in-law who was amazing. She tried talking to him. Um, he was her first child, and I know they had an amazing relationship. But again, those people aren't in the house when everyone else is gone.
sure.
And so with the first attempt for me, it did not go well. I had some friends who shared the information with their husbands, and then their husbands had called my husband at the time, and it did not go very well. I still talk to this particular friend. I still talk to her to this day. I know her heart was in the right place. Um, but it was hard, how to make a decision for someone else in someone else's home, and their safety. And so for me, it didn't go very well. And I encourage anyone who's out there, again, whether they're in the situation or know someone, the first thing that you have to do is make a plan
Mm,
and encourage them to make a plan, a safety plan. And the whole process, as I think about it now, the first thing that you have to do in that safety plan is think about your own self-worth. I didn't think about my own self-worth. Again, part of my upbringing in the church had me thinking that, you know what, if I die, what's the worst that could happen? Clearly, I'm going to go to heaven, because anybody who endured something like this and tried their best and loved their best, I'm going to heaven. And everybody wants to go to heaven. It's just nobody wants to die to get there.
so true. No one's in a rush to get there, at least, right?
Yes. And so just that thinking, I didn't have enough strength for myself. And so, unfortunately, in my case, you know, my final decision to leave, I still didn't have enough strength for myself, but it was something that my son did that I had enough strength for them to make the move. And so, in that safety plan, you have to put yourself in that plan. And it was way later that I really started working on myself. And it took me having my kids, and people could be in violent situations and not have children. So I encourage you to think about, in your safety plan, how are you thinking about yourself and your worth? Because that's the person that's going to help get you through when the times are tight.
Mm. And the first time you attempted to leave, he actually stopped you from taking the kids, and you had a great exit strategy, but then you ended up away from your children. And so I think that any woman could understand that, with enough apologies, begging, and the fact that your children were in another country now, that you would want to go back and see if you could fix it and be with your children again. So when you got back
Absolutely.
there, it always starts off great, they say, and then and by the way, you and I've spoken quite a few times. In law school, I studied domestic violence for a while, and the apologies are really sincere. Like, they really do. He really regretted what he did, but then he would do it again.
Mhm. Yeah, it's, again, you know, I've never been one to say it, if it happens once, it will always happen.
Mhm.
If it happens once and they don't get help, they don't learn why they have that behavior and the ability and the tools that they'll need to address their own triggers. Insecurity, and a lot of people who abuse other people, is one of the main things. They're insecure, and it's a power. It is simply power over someone else. And until that's addressed, then he didn't know what his triggers were.
Yeah.
So it was fine for a moment. And I believe the words were sincere in the moment. But then when there's a trigger, when there's a feeling of insecurity and not having the tools to address it, the patterns went right back.
It's
And
interesting.
so
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
now people just need to be able to identify that um, as a need for a behavioral change.
In the book, and I don't want to ruin it because I cannot recommend this book enough. You should get this book. Any woman walking the earth should read this book. But in the book, you could, after a while, I'm reading it and I'm going, oh God, here it goes again, because you would see that it would either be sometimes a lack of significance, like he didn't feel like he was important enough, to you, or the jealousy of thinking some other man, was trying to connect with you. It seemed like those were common problems that would come up. So with all of that being said, after you went and were with him again and with the children again, it started again and it got worse. And would you share with everybody how you ended up leaving? Because it's really interesting, the care and caution you did to get out of there without getting stopped, and get the children and get your two sons out with you. Can you talk about that? Because it's important for people to understand all this.
Yeah, it was really about that safety plan. A lot of people, they don't think about the leaving as being the difficult part. It's what you're going to do once you leave. In a lot of domestic violence situations, it's not till somebody leaves that sometimes there's a fatality afterwards. And so it was developing a safety plan. What did I have with where I was? No, I couldn't share it with many people. I had some fantastic women who the shock came to me is all the things that I thought I was hiding, even from my own children. Years later, in talking to my kids, the things that I thought that we would either close a door, or things I thought that I was hiding from them, they knew the whole time.
Yeah.
They knew the whole time. Women, the woman who helped me, when I finally shared, she was like, "You don't have to say anything. I always knew." Part of it is because it had looked familiar to her, not because she herself had been in a domestic violence situation with her husband, but as a child, she was in a domestic violence situation. So she remembered things,
Wow.
whether her mom would do, or so all this time that I thought that, because I was very engaged in the community, I thought that I still put on, what I call my power pants. As a woman, we try to take care of everyone. I thought I was still doing that. And there were things that, people that cared about me noticed. And so I put together a safety plan, thinking about the things that I missed the first time around, and wanted to make sure that, I had all bases covered, and literally, crouched down in the airport. I just wanted to keep my kids safe. And it wasn't about hatred. You spoke earlier about forgiveness, and I love watching your show and the different videos to help give people, whether in their career or whether their personal life, the tools and resources that they need to help them get to their next. I knew I would forgive him, and I forgave him as soon as I got on the plane, because I knew it wasn't just about who he was in his core. There were a lot of factors going on. Once we got to his country, it was, how can somebody who's not from my country have an easier way of adjusting, or have things go her way, and this is my country and I'm having a hard time.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of other factors. So the forgiveness was, you and I talked briefly, God doesn't make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, he needed the things from that man, and he needed the things that I have to make two amazing children.
Yes.
And I look constantly and I see different things. I deal in nonprofit. I've been in nonprofit for about 22 years, and talking to women, and women who are on that one last nerve. So that hair that stands in the back of your neck, and that one last one, and that child has said or done something, and they, quickly snap. I've never looked at my kids and said, the worst in you is what I see from your father.
Mm.
The best in them is what I saw in their father, because that's what made me fall in love, is the best of them. And so for me, it was, let me get a safety plan, because it's all about getting us there safely, because tomorrow, my tomorrow wasn't going to be anything if I knew I didn't have them in it with me.
Sure. So you had to leave. I hope you don't mind if I share the country. Is that okay with you?
No.
So you were in
No.
Nigeria at this point, where he's from, with
Yes.
your children, and you had to get out of the country and sneak out without him catching you, stopping you, and he had the passports. I mean, you went through a lot to do that. And now what's beautiful also, there's a quote you have. What's your grandmother's quote again? Can you share that about the mess?
That in the messes, sometimes in the messes will come a message. And I look at that. There's a message in the mess. And in the mess, even now, when I didn't understand it, I've seen that there is a message. My kids, if not have gone through their upbringing, would not be the amazing young men that they are. I watch them in their relationships with other people and their patience, and I'm grateful. And those are the lessons that we can't always teach. Certainly, they don't get it in school. um, the environment that we find ourselves in, everybody is having to do things on Zoom or, online. Those relational things, they don't always get practice in that. And so, it was a mess, but there has been a message.
Yeah, it's interesting. You shared with me a story that your sons are kind of the other direction now. You were sharing that one of your sons was, jumping into school to protect somebody from a young lady from someone else who was not treating her correctly. So they've really been impacted to kind of be heroes for women because of all of this.
Yeah. I think, talking to them about love being respect, and love doesn't hurt, doesn't mean you won't get your heart broken. That's life. That's life. But love doesn't hurt. And I think they have definitely become amazing young men because of it.
Well, the other part is that, as I wouldn't wish anybody to go through what you've been through. And I am so sorry that you have had that experience, but you really took your grandmother's advice. And this book, I'm just telling you, this book, if it really lets someone experience what it was like to be you, not the physical and emotional pain, but just the journey of how did this happen and it's not going to happen again, and going through forgiving and all of it. Like, you laid it out in such a powerful way that you really walk off understanding how somebody would be struggling with, what do I do with myself and my children, and I'm married to this person. It's brilliantly written, brilliantly written. It truly is. So
Thank
if
you.
somebody is watching this, Kay, there's two things I'd like to ask you before we conclude. One is, numbers are numbers, and there's no doubt there are people watching this that are going through what you've been through. If you could reach out to them, and I know that's one of the reasons you wrote the book, but if you could reach out to them, what would you say? What did you need someone to say to you if they haven't left and they keep forgiving and they're still in that same place? What advice or words would you want to pass on to somebody?
I think the first one would be that you are enough. Wherever you are, whatever you have right now is enough. Um, I believe that what we need for our next success, what we need for our journey, is already inside of us. And so if you know that, then you can just put one foot in front of the other and understand that sometimes it's stepping out on that faith that what else you need will come into you. I'm just going to share a brief story. And I can't help but think about this. I started over with 2 kids and $8. And I had no idea. The main person who was around to help me was no longer around. She passed away, which was my grandmother.
Yeah.
And I came back with 2 kids and $8. I had been home not too long, and I get a call from Harris County because we had lived briefly in Houston, Texas. And there was a call from I think maybe they were with the city treasurer's office, but this woman called and said, hey, you know, Wendy Kay, we've been trying to get a hold of you for 6 years. And we have this extra money. Uh, do you remember getting into a car accident and where somebody hit your BMW? And I said, yeah, I remember. And they said, well, that gentleman was required to pay a restitution. And we have a check for you for $1,600.
Oh my gosh.
Now, $1,600 is not a lot of money, but we were sleeping on my grandfather's floor, me and, my kids. And I say that to say that that came from nowhere. I was not expecting it.
Mm.
I had no idea it was coming, but it was a sign to show me that, you know what? It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I had people who showed up who, I've never been too proud. I am a proud, anyone who knows me will say, you're always so well put together. I'm a proud consignment shopper. Okay. Whatever it takes to make sure that I show up the way I want to show up, which is, my head held high and put together to represent whatever I have to be representing. But I had no shame in accepting clothes from people. Okay. It'll be okay. So knowing that you're enough, because for a long time, I felt like I deserved something. And then I didn't deserve, whether it's happiness, I didn't deserve to find the true love that I needed. That's what I believed. And I operated and moved like that. So you have to start first in believing you're enough. And then create a safety plan for yourself. Something where make copies of all credit cards, driver's license, birth certificates. Make sure that you at least have copies, because especially now that we see in the pandemic, it is increasingly hard to, find additional documentation that you have lost, or, kids being home and people are having to change schools, et cetera. Like, you need to be able to get your hands on that documentation, and maybe you don't know the numbers. So at least if you have copies, that's somewhere to start. So if you lose it, that's still somewhere to start. Write down the numbers to credit cards, right? The customer service number, just like you would if in a lost or stolen situation. So if you need access, and then a safety plan could include, a couple dollars. No, you can't always keep that in the bank somewhere if you're trying to get away, but keep it with a friend that you trust. And take pictures early and often. Because sometimes, again, with me, A, I didn't want to be reminded, and B, I wasn't trying to put somebody else in a situation. I didn't want to shame, my husband. That wasn't the goal. I just wanted to be safe. I wanted the kids to be safe. And I wanted him to get help. And so, but take pictures and take them often. And don't take them on your cell phone if you're just going to leave them there.
Yeah.
Try to get them off your cell phone or send them to a friend, but get pictures and get pictures often.
So, you talk about sending stuff to a friend. There were some great things in the book and some really challenging things in the book about how people impacted you. We talked about some people were pushing you to stay, but there were also some people who reached out and they were trying to sneak money to you and help you. So if you have the opportunity here to talk to someone who suspects or knows that a friend or relative is going through this, what would you encourage them to do? So let's say, I'm watching this and, I think or know someone is going through this, but they're not talking about it. They're not saying anything. What would you tell us to do to help other women?
So there's a number, 1-800-799-SAFE, SAFE, that people can call if they're in the US, nationally, that they can call. Sometimes just listen. Sometimes when the person is coming to you, it's not for advice. It's for you to listen and to help them think about what their next would be. It's not the time to give advice of what you do. It's really the time to listen, understand, and how you can help. If they're a person that's at work, telling them, look, I will help you. I decided I was going to leave while I was sitting in front of my desk.
Yeah, that was
Um,
wild. Yeah.
and just, something just was telling me today is the day. And be that listening person. If you suspect, start keeping a safety kit for them,
Oh, that's
right? Start keeping a safety kit for them of things that they may need. If some people have to leave in a hurry, right? I left with no luggage. It was days before anyone knew I was actually on a plane. Um, and that was, you have to think about that. So start keeping things for someone, because again, it's the starting over that usually terrorizes people. How am I going to start over with
yeah.
no clothes and no? So just be that person so that they know that, you know what, I've got your back. I know you don't have it all figured out, but we're going to walk this together. And sometimes that's enough.
You talk about that, to get on a plane with no luggage and $8 and 2 children and leave the country is astounding. So I just want to thank you for your bravery, your courage, your vulnerability. I mean, I can't tell people enough. Get this book. We're going to put a link in the comments. Hopefully the glare's not catching it, but it's holding on to somewhere. Now, you did write this with a different name to protect your kids at that point. So it's not under K. Wilson. It's under K. Shabazz, correct? So
Correct.
we'll put an Amazon link for that too.
Thank you.
And I pray that people who are watching this, if you know somebody, that this will give you another view on how you can help or how you can get away from it. But Kay, you are extraordinary. I mean, the stories of
Thank
what
you
you
so
went through,
much.
I can't say enough great things about you. And for you to take all this and make it public and help people, you did fulfill what your grandmother said, and you made your mess a message in many, many ways. And I'm sure you've helped quite a few people today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leanne, for the opportunity. You have an amazing platform, and I just, applaud you for all that you do and all the subjects that you've touched. Things that I've seen on YouTube have been amazing, and thank you for providing the platform.
Well, thank you so much. And you are in the Facebook group as well that goes with this. So are you okay if people want to reach out to you or message you? Is that all right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So if you see this and you're watching it on YouTube or Facebook, I would encourage you, any comments or feedback you have. It takes one lioness of a woman to go through this, come out of it, raise 2 incredible children, start her life all over again, and write a book on all of it to help everybody else. So any comments or feedback that you would want to share for Kay, we would really appreciate it. Thank you, Kay, so much. Blessings to you and your kids, and hoping you have nothing but healthy love for the rest of your life.
Thank you so much. You as well.
Everyone take care, and we will see you next week.